Hey guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you an unboxing plus on-feet video of the brand new, yet to be released Nike Mercurial Superfly 4 in the Hyper Punch, Volt, and Metallic Gold colorway. Now inside the box, as you'll get with all the top-end models from Nike, a string bag is included. This particular string bag is Hyper Punch Pink in color. You're going to find black strings on the bag, a black Nike swoosh on the one side, and the black Nike football branding on the other. So we'll get that out of the way. And other than that, all you'll find inside the box are, of course, the shoes themselves. So we'll get these out of the box really quickly. And if you guys could take a second to leave a like on the video, it would be greatly appreciated. So here they are, guys, the Superfly 4. Everybody's been waiting for a review. I've been really just waiting in anticipation until I had an opportunity to pick up a pair for myself. They are currently on pre-order, and I believe will ship out as of June 12th. So we're still about a week away until the majority of people who ordered these things are actually going to have them in their hands. So I'm pretty lucky to have them a little bit early, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are happy to hear my impressions because I've been getting messages and messages and messages for weeks now asking when I'm going to get the Superfly 4. The answer is now. I finally have them, and I have to say it's definitely very, very different. It's an unusual shoe. It follows the same concept as the Nike Magista Obra in that it has that mid-cut design as well as the 100% Flyknit Upper. And really, it's the only shoe that at this point in time is really going to compare at least somewhat closely to the Superfly 4. So throughout this video, I'm going to be making some comparisons between the two shoes. There's lots and lots of info on my channel and website about the Magista Obra. So if you haven't seen any of the videos, if you haven't read the full written review, I would recommend doing so if you want to learn a little bit more about the Superfly 4, or if you just want to wait for future videos on that. Of course, they will be coming in the next couple of days and over the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. As far as retail price is concerned, for those that don't know, this has a $275 US retail price, which does seem a little bit steep, but in comparison to the Superfly 3, its predecessor, that had a retail price of $400, which is absolutely crazy. So $275, not terribly unreasonable, and also keep in mind that's just a retail price, so you don't necessarily have to pay that. If you check out the review page on my website, link down below in the description of this video, you're going to find exclusive buy it now links along with SR4U coupon codes, allowing you to pick these up well below the retail price. So be sure to go ahead and check that out. If you're interested in a pair, you don't have to pay the full $275, so please keep that in mind. With that being said, let's get right into the video because there is a lot to talk about with the Superfly 4. To start things off, I thought we would quickly go over the colorway as well as just the general appearance of the Superfly 4. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are looking at my pair and asking yourselves why they look different from the pictures online of all the retailers that are pre-ordering these things, and there's a reasonable explanation as to why that is. Now, what happens whenever a new model is released, and this frequently happens with Nike, is they'll send out a pre-production sample pair of Superfly 4s in this particular situation way before the shoe is available in stock, way before the shoe goes up for pre-order. So when Nike actually does want to release the shoe and put it for pre-order, the stores have images of the Superfly 4 to pick up. Now, because it is a pre-production sample, pre-production implying that they're not actually producing the shoes yet, that means that it might not be exactly the same as the final product, and that is the case here with the Superfly 4. You guys remember when the Vapor 9 first launched, there were certain websites that had images of the shoe with a carbon fiber midfoot and heel area, and then the silver glass fiber in the forefoot. That was a pre-production sample. The final product, none of them featured carbon fiber in the sole plate, and that's the same with the Superfly 4. So you can see that my pair is not a solid red Flyknit. If you get up close, you can see that it's a combination of that Hyper Punch Pink as well as Volt Yellow kind of intertwined into one single piece to make up the Flyknit Upper, and it's definitely very interesting looking and a lot different from what the images are showing online. And you're also going to notice in the mid-cut collar that it does not have a little yellow cutout for the laces to be tucked in. Again, that's something that was only on the pre-production sample pairs and not on the production pairs. So if you're ordering a pair of Superfly 4s, no matter where you're ordering from, no matter which images they're showing, this is what you are going to receive, just like the ones I'm holding here in my hands. Even if you order from Nike's own website, they actually have the wrong pictures themselves, surprisingly. So again, no matter where you order these things from, this is the shoe that you will receive. This is what the production pair looks like because they are a pair of production Superfly 4s, which are made in Bosnia, by the way. So it doesn't look like any of the Flyknit models are made in China or Indonesia or any of those places. They're either made in Italy or made in Bosnia, which I guess is kind of nice to see considering they are $275. But as far as the colorway is concerned, like I mentioned, it is a full Flyknit upper, and you can see that the Flyknit is not a solid hyper punch or red color. And that's another thing I wanted to mention. The online pictures make these look like a very deep red, and I've said this about all the hyper punch Mercurials at this point in time. But in person, it's much more of a pink color. Because this one has the Volt and the hyper punch kind of intertwined together, it looks like a pinky orange color. And just for comparison's sake, I grabbed a pair of Vapor 10s, and you can see that this is kind of a solid hyper punch. So for that reason, it looks more like a reddish pink in person. So again, this is more of a reddish pink. This one is more of an orangish pink. But just keep in mind that neither of the Mercurials, any of the Mercurials for that model, are going to look like that deep red color that pretty much all the online pictures are showing. So please keep that in mind if you are planning on pre-ordering. If you can't handle the pink, you may want to wait for a future colorway. Other than that, you can see that you have the same Nike swoosh found on all the other Mercurial models. Volt yellow base, metallic gold pattern on the inside, and then of course that black outline. And you can see you have that same Nike swoosh, obviously in much smaller form, right here on the medial side of the heel. The laces have that same kind of combination of hyper punch and almost like an orangish color. It's really interesting. It's not a solid lace, and you can see you have that same kind of orange and hyper punch combination of colors here in the dynamic fit collar. You can see that there are perforations there with the underlay material being Volt yellow, which is a nice little accent. On the back, you're going to find a little red strip that fuses the entire upper together along with the stitching there. It's really the only seam you're going to find on the shoe. And then of course your Mercurial branding there in back. The inside liner, as you guys can see, is Volt yellow, which is kind of cool. Then you have this little Mercurial graphic here on the inside of the liner. The top piece of the dynamic fit collar is black, just like what we're going to find on the Magista Obra. And then moving on to the sole plate, you have your full carbon fiber sole plate with some translucent studs as well as some Volt yellow studs. Again, a very similar layout to what you're going to find from the Vapor 10, but of course it's carbon fiber as opposed to compressed nylon. Other than that though, one thing that I noted in regards to the looks of the Superfly 4 is it looks a little bit unusual to me in person. When you compare it to the Obra, which is also an unusual looking shoe because of that mid-cut design, the Obra at least has that external heel counter, which to me just makes it look a little bit more normal. Something like this actually looks kind of like just a sock because you don't have that external heel counter. There is something internally, it is solid back here, but again, because you can't see it, it just gives this shoe to me more of an odd look than what you're going to get from the Magista Obra. It's certainly not a shoe for everybody in terms of overall appearance. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And with that being said, let's move on to what this shoe is all about when it comes to technology and innovation. Obviously, one of the most defining elements of the Superfly 4 is the Flyknit Upper. So what is Flyknit? I think there's still a lot of confusion around the concept as a whole. Flyknit is a machine knit upper, and I say machine knit because a person couldn't actually knit this. This is not grandma's socks strapped to a sole plate with some studs like a lot of people believe it to be. It's much, much more complex than that. It's much more technologically advanced, and it's much better quality, to be completely honest with you guys. I think that a lot of the skepticism around the quality and just general durability of the Flyknit uppers on both the Superfly and the Obra are understandable, but once people have the opportunity to try these on, hold them in their hands, feel the Flyknit upper for themselves, a lot of that skepticism will go away because just like all of Nike's other Flyknit products outside of soccer, these are just as good in terms of overall quality, if not better. Now, like I said, it's machine knit, so it's pretty much perfect. There's really no imperfections in the upper whatsoever. It's a very, very impressive piece of engineering, and that's really what makes Flyknit such an exciting and revolutionary material to be implemented into a soccer cleat. It's completely engineered. Nike has the ability to engineer every square millimeter of the upper. They can choose to make it thicker, they can choose to make it thinner, they can determine the color, they can determine the support, they can determine the softness, the stiffness, the flexibility, they can make it elasticated, they can do pretty much whatever they want with every square millimeter of the upper, which, like I said, is truly revolutionary and something that no other synthetic would allow them to do. So that's why you have the one-piece design. That's part of the reason why you have the mid-cut design incorporated into this one-piece upper. It's trying to go for that seamless feel, a truly sock-like effect, and you definitely get that from the Magista Obra as well as the Superfly 4, although it does feel a little bit different in comparison for a couple of different reasons that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the video. So Flyknit is made from several different types of yarns and synthetic materials that, again, vary in terms of how they are made and also how they feel. Around the collar area as well as down the middle, it's pretty much an elasticated type of Flyknit, but it's much thicker than you might expect. You can see the thickness right there. They say it's a 3-knit construction, which really doesn't say all that much. It doesn't tell you anything as to how they're actually making this. I kind of take away from that there's 3 layers of Flyknit to make up the upper, and in comparison to something like the Magista Obra, you can see that the construction process, the pattern in the Flyknit is a lot more simple than the Obra. It's also a lot thinner and a lot kind of less heavily patterned. It's pretty much completely smooth, as you can see. There's a little bit of texturing from the brio cables that run through the lacing system as your kind of main support element for that lateral stability when you're making those hard lateral cuts. But again, in comparison to the Obra, this is definitely going to be a lot thinner and a lot less advanced in terms of the patterns that they've implemented into the upper. But in terms of visuals, it's very, very cool. Again, they've kind of mixed up the Volt and the Hyper Punch color all in the same material, and it just gives it a very interesting look. It definitely does have that sock-like visual appearance about it, especially because you don't have that heel counter. But again, in terms of just being very impressive, very soft, and just feeling really good, I'm really happy with the Flyknit Upper on the Superfly 4. In terms of thickness though, what I can say is that just from kind of putting the shoes on and juggling around for a little bit prior to making the video, it doesn't feel as thin as the Tasian synthetic on the current Mercurial Vapor 10, a shoe that I already have in. And if you want to check out any more videos on that, I'll leave a couple annotations on screen. But that kind of surprised me because I was expecting this to be paper thin, and that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case, at least right off the bat, just from my initial impressions from wearing the shoe. It does have a slight padding to it. It is very thin. It feels very natural. It moves with your foot. But like I said, it doesn't feel quite as thin as the Tasian synthetic upper on the Vapor 10, which I think will surprise a few people, but isn't necessarily a big issue or any gripe that I have with the shoe at this point in time. As far as the rest of the upper goes, what's different about the Superfly 4 versus the Obra, again, other than the simple kind of one-piece type of pattern here, it's completely smooth, there's not much texturing to it. There's actually a support cage on the inside of the shoe as well, something that I can't really show you. You can see it a little bit in there, but it's a fused-on support cage similar to what you're going to find on a Vapor 10 or even a Veloce 2. A little bit different type of construction and pattern in there, but again, there is some actual support on the inside of the shoe, which I would assume is there mainly for structural integrity and just having the correct amount of responsiveness and lateral stability from an upper that is very thin and essentially made from a knitted material. So again, curious to see how these are going to perform in terms of just being responsive and providing decent lateral support. I would assume they're going to be okay, but I honestly was not expecting to see that liner in there. So this is not a straight Flyknit upper like what you're going to get from the Magista Obra, which has a thin padded liner, to be completely fair, but from what I can tell, no extra support other than the Flyknit itself, and of course the Flywire cables incorporated into the lacing system. So along with the Flyknit construction of the upper, you have 2 variations of Flyknit, a more kind of dense, rigid, non-stretchy Flyknit material which runs through the main part of the foot. That area is covered in a clear Nike skin covering, which is essentially a thin layer of polyurethane that's going to protect this area of the shoe. It's going to make it very easy to clean. It's not going to absorb any water at all, and it's also going to provide that slight kind of soft wax finish that you find on the Hypervenom Phantom as well as the Magista Obra. So again, a very similar element to the Obra in that respect. It doesn't add any extra bulk to the upper. It doesn't take away from the softness or the natural flexibility. It's just there to add that little bit of extra grip and act as a protective coating for the entire upper. Along with that, you're also going to get ACC all conditions control. No surprise there. Acts as your wet control element, and you're going to find it on all the top end models from Nike. Now the second variation of Flyknit you're going to find on the upper is the elasticated section, again just like what you're going to find on the Magista Obra. So through the top of the tongue, or where the tongue would normally be, I guess through the middle of the shoe where the laces are situated, as well as the entire dynamic fit collar, it's very stretchy, as you can see. So it allows you to get the shoe on and off more easily. It moves naturally with your foot, and of course because you have that elasticated area in the middle of the foot, when you put the shoe on, it immediately kind of wraps your foot nice and closely, kind of has that compression type of fit, even without having tied the laces tight. So it's an interesting feel, something that is completely different from everything else out there on the market, and it's really the best one-piece soccer cleat design design that I've ever personally tried. Lotto tried it with their Zero Gravity series, but it really didn't offer a great fit. Something like the Superfly and the Obra offer a phenomenal fit from right out of the box, just because the Flyknit material is stretchy where it needs to be and soft and flexible in the other places. So it pretty much just adapts and wraps your foot almost instantly with really no break-in time required. You can see that the material here, it looks like the top layer is Hyper Punch, and then when you kind of stretch it out a little bit, you can see the underlay material is Volt, which I thought was kind of a cool little element there. Even these things that look like perforations, they're not. There is several layers there. It's not holes or anything like that, so there's no real breathability, if you will, in the ankle area. But again, there's no structural integrity to this ankle guard. You do have your heel counter internally, so there is structure there. But right here, it's just going to wrap your ankle fairly snug. It feels a little bit more snug than the Obra, to be completely honest, but again, we'll talk about that later. But in terms of restrictiveness and affecting your touch on the ball, it's not something that you're really going to notice all that much, other than it just visually looking a little bit funny. That's pretty much it as far as the upper is concerned. And move on next to a quick look at the new Soleplate and stud pattern. Just like the first three Superfly models, the Superfly 4 also features a carbon fiber sole plate, this time partnered with the latest and greatest Mercurial stud pattern. Now, unlike the first three Superflies, the carbon fiber sole plate on this one doesn't feel quite the same. Obviously, it does have that visual styling of the carbon fiber, giving it a very unique and very impressive look. I think that carbon fiber looks cool on pretty much anything, especially on the base of a sole plate. So in terms of looks, 10 out of 10 if you ask me. But in terms of feel, it's not as stiff, it's not as rigid as what we got from the first three Superflies. So for that reason, it's not going to feel quite as responsive, which is a good and bad thing depending on what your preference is. In all honesty, it reminds me a lot in terms of stiffness and just overall feel from wearing them around the house as the compressed nylon sole plate of the Vapor 10, which is what I have right here. And what you're going to notice on this carbon fiber sole plate, unlike the previous ones from Nike, is that this one does have that same kind of Y stiffness beam through the middle. It's not exactly the same as the glass or the compressed nylon, but it's a very similar pattern. They have it there just to stiffen through the midfoot. And from what I can tell, just based on it not being super stiff, I would presume that there isn't a ton of carbon fiber in the actual construction of this sole plate. It's probably just one or two layers just to give it that visual effect. Not to say that it doesn't do anything, but it's not to the same extreme as previous Superfly models, and that's really what I want to get across. But at the same time, I don't want to say that's a bad thing either. It feels very natural, a little bit less stiff, a little bit more flexibility, and to me it really suits the natural flexibility of the Flyknit one-piece upper. So again, not a negative thing by any means, but just keep in mind it's not the same carbon fiber sole plate that Nike has released time and time again with their previous models. Now, as far as the new Mercurial stud pattern is concerned, you can see that it's the same one featured on all the other takedown models of the Mercurial, the new Mercurial line. Nike has reverted back to a 4-stud layout in the heel as opposed to the 2-stud layout that we saw on the Vapor 8 and Vapor 9. To me, this is definitely a step in the right direction. It's a bladed stud, as you can see, and having 4 studs in the back, it's going to provide not necessarily quite as much grip because it won't penetrate the ground quite as easily, but it's a lot more stable and better suited for a wider variety of firm ground natural grass playing surfaces. As far as the forefoot is concerned, a lot of the studs are still positioned in the same place, and some of you guys pointed out in my other videos, and it's 100% true, that the studs this time around aren't quite as narrow and sharp as what we got on the Vapor 8 and Vapor 9. So again, the stability is a little bit more increased with this new stud pattern, but they don't dig into the ground quite as well. There will be a traction test coming with the Superfly 4 very soon, so look out for that. I'm going to talk about the performance more in that video. And then you have this kind of unique kind of oval layout of bladed studs right here at the toe, so you have something to push off in pretty much all directions when you are kind of really ready to go on your toes, pretty much ready to sprint in all directions. So again, a nice little addition right there. And you have this little kind of toe pick piece that kind of raises from the sole plate right here again at the tip of the toe. It's just enough to where it will make for a slight bit of grip, I suppose, if you, like I said, are kind of right on the tip of your toes ready to go. And to me, it's something that I much prefer over the kind of diamond texturing they had on the Vapor 8 and 9. To me, this is going to be a lot more effective, and at the same time, it's not going to get in the way when you're shooting or chipping the ball or anything like that. So again, definitely a nice new and improved stud pattern. Not necessarily better in terms of performance, but I think is going to be better for a wider variety of playing surfaces, which is definitely not a bad thing. I think more people are going to prefer this stud pattern over what we got from the Vapor 8 as well as the Vapor 9. Very quickly, I just wanted to go over the inside of the Superfly 4. It does feature an insole, of course, which is fully removable, and it's very similar to what you're going to find on the Vapor 10. Features a mesh liner on top. This one is Volt Yellow in color with your Mercurial branding right there. Perforations throughout, and it's made from one single layer of the same black foam on the Vapor 10, but in comparison, this one does feel a tad thicker, and as you can see, the pattern on the bottom features these little lines that are going to grip the base of the sole a little bit better, so it's not going to slide around on the inside. Although I did not have that issue with the Vapor 10, they just did that little bit of an improvement with the Superfly 4, so it wouldn't be an issue at all. So a nice little touch there, but nothing too significant. Not the best insole, but it will, of course, get the job done. And as far as heel liners go, it's kind of something that most people have not disclosed, really, just because it's kind of tough to show the inside of the shoe, but hopefully you can see a little bit. It's actually a black liner, so it doesn't really show up on camera all that well, where there's a smooth synthetic leather material, similar to what you're going to find on the Magista Obra, but this one has a little bit more coverage, I find, and also a little bit more padding, and I think that may be due to the heel counter being internal as opposed to external, like you're going to find on the Obra model. So in terms of comfort, it feels pretty good from right out of the box, and it's a similar type of sensation in the heel area that you get from the Obra, which honestly isn't too surprising. Other than maybe the Superfly 1, the Superfly series as a whole was never leading the race as far as lightweight soccer cleats go, and the same can be said about the Superfly 4. So I'm going to weigh this pair for you today in real time. Keep in mind this is a brand new pair in a size 9 US. Going to throw it on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 7 ounces exactly, which surprisingly is a little bit more than I was honestly expecting. I thought they would weigh somewhere around 6.5 to 6 ounces, but at 7 ounces is certainly not a heavy shoe. They're going to feel nice and light both in hand as well as on feet, and offer a tremendous amount of comfort considering the weight range that it falls under. But in terms of other lightweight options out there on the market, I guess for comparison's sake, if you want to compare it to the Obra, that shoe weighs in around 7.2, 7.4 ounces, so it's in a very, very similar weight range to the Superfly 4. There's not a big difference there. And in comparison to the Vapor 10, which is one model below the Superfly 4, even though it's not a takedown, that shoe weighs in at around 6.2, 6.3 ounces. So Superfly 4 is almost a full ounce heavier than that of the Vapor 10. So again, it's not the lightest shoe out there on the market, but I'm not sure that everybody buying this shoe is in it for the ultra lightweight feel. They want that sock-like experience, they want that mid-cut design, they want that Flyknit upper, and they just want the Superfly 4 no matter what it weighs. So again, not a big deal that it isn't the lightest shoe in the world, but I just wanted you guys to know that they aren't the lightest shoe in the world. Alright, here's a look at the Superfly 4s on feet at a slightly different angle than I normally show. Just wanted to give you guys an idea of how these things look with that mid-cut design with a full-length pair of soccer socks. Now in terms of the height of the shoe, it's pretty much the same height as the Magista Obra, kind of cutting off slightly above the ankle, so it definitely does have a slightly unusual look, and it will clash with most kits. You can see I have a pair of kind of royal blue socks, and it definitely is noticeable that I have a mid-cut pair of soccer shoes on. So again, that really depends on personal preference as to whether or not you like how that looks, or you like the feel of the shoe enough to justify wearing them even though you don't like how they look. Again, it's kind of up to you whether or not this is going to be your next pair of soccer shoes. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. But in regards to how it feels, the dynamic fit collar does fit fairly snug. I would say even a little bit more snug than what you're going to get from the Magista Obra. But in terms of overall comfort, it still feels very natural. It moves nicely with the bend and flex of your ankle in pretty much all directions. It doesn't restrict movement in any way at all. And it doesn't get in the way when you are making touches on the ball. So for the most part, it kind of plays into that one-piece sock-like enclosure for your foot that the Superfly and the Obra are all about. So in terms of feel, I give it an A+. In terms of looks, that is something you have to determine for yourself. In terms of fit, the Superfly 4 feels extremely comfortable, but in comparison to the Obra, there's actually some pretty big differences. With the Magista Obra, I found that the shoe really didn't take its shape until you put your foot inside, and it kind of formed to the exact shape of your foot, like a pair of socks would. With the Superfly 4, you still get that sensation through the midfoot and heel area, but the forefoot and toe box has more of a predetermined shape with this particular model, as you guys saw throughout the video when I didn't have the shoes on my feet. And if you look at the Obra videos, you can see that the toe is a little bit less kind of defined as far as shape is concerned. It kind of just goes right to the edge, and then it doesn't take shape until you put your foot inside. This one, like I said, has more of a shape, so it's not quite as tight from right out of the box in the forefoot and toe box area as, like I said, the Obra is. But in terms of overall shape, again, it's very similar to that of any of the past couple Mercurials we've had over the last few years. It's definitely tighter through the midfoot, slightly tighter in the forefoot, and then the toe box. Because it's such a soft Flyknit material, it's nice and flexible. It doesn't feel overly tight, but it definitely is very snug. So for the most part, if you do have excessively wide feet, this may not be the best option for you. And if you fit into any of the other Mercurial models, you're still going to fit in the Superfly 4. But if you've always had issues with Mercurials, you may want to stay away from this model altogether, simply because you're not really going to get much stretch from the upper whatsoever. In terms of sizing, I'm wearing my usual size 9 US here, and the fit and the length is absolutely perfect. So just like any of the other Mercurial models, if you are interested in a pair of Superfly 4s, I would strongly recommend going true to size. Alright guys, that's it for my unboxing of the Nike Mercurial Superfly 4. I honestly didn't know what to expect with this shoe. After wearing the Obra and really enjoying them, I wasn't sure how much different the Superfly 4 was going to feel, but to my surprise, it does feel like a completely different shoe. It's got a totally different Flyknit upper, a similar mid-cut design, I will grant it that, but the sole plate and stud pattern are again completely different, and it really changes how this shoe feels versus something like the Magista Obra. So I'm excited to try them out, very curious to see how they're going to perform, and of course I will follow up with future comparison videos. A playtest is going to be coming hopefully within the next week on the Superfly 4, so I'll give you guys more information there on how the overall performance of this shoe is. And of course my full written review will follow in the next couple of weeks. This one will become one of my priority reviews, because I know a lot of you guys are probably interested to see how this shoe actually does perform. In the meantime, if you guys enjoyed today's video, be sure to support it with a like. If you have any questions regarding the Superfly 4, any suggestions for Superfly 4 videos, comparisons, whatever it may be, any type of video on this shoe that you'd like to see, be sure to leave your suggestions down below in the comment section. If you would like more information on the shoe right now, check out the review page on my website, linked down below in the description. You'll find the high quality images of this pair, and again, please keep in mind this is the production version, not the sample versions that you're seeing at a lot of the online retailers. And also on that review page, along with the high quality images I took myself, you'll find buy it now links with the best prices online, including exclusive SR4U coupon codes, allowing you to pick these up below the $275 retail. So be sure to go ahead and check that out. Other than that, guys, subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all of my social media information down below in the description as well. And other than that, hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.